Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Beatles Forever. In our last episode, we saw Mal expanding his role in the Beatles from bodyguard to jack of all trades, and he made his position known in the entourage circle, and he could be forceful, but when he claimed his position in the pecking order, he could be, as he said, Mr. Nice Guy. So let's see what's going on today. Mal, at the hotel in San Francisco, met up with Ivor Davis. He was a British journalist who served as the West Coast correspondent for the Daily Express, a London-based newspaper that boasted circulation of 4 million daily copies. Davis later remembered the moment he arrived at the Beatles' lodgings. I shook hands with Mal Evans, a burly 6-footer sporting heavy dark-framed glasses, and Neil Aspinall, a thinner, boyish-looking young man who looked as though he might be a relative of the Fab Four. Davis was to go with the entourage and the Beatles for the rest of the tour. Then they had a man named Larry Kane, who was 21 years old, and he was doing the coast-to-coast coverage during the first 2 American tours. Just like with Davis, Kane's initiation into the world of Beatlemania came courtesy of Mal and Neil, whom he spotted pacing up and down the hotel corridors, always looking for interlopers. Kane liked Mal immediately. He thought that Mal kept a pleasant demeanor even when the chips were down. Kane wrote, "When it came time to bite the bullet, he would become serious for an instant, but you knew he was faking. This was a man whose smile and cheerful demeanor were contagious." On August 20th, the Beatles' entourage set up camp for the show at Las Vegas's Convention Hall, where the whole rigmarole reinvented itself all over again. Only this time, the band got even closer to a sex scandal that they hadn't encountered since their tours in Australia. The Sahara Hotel, recognizing the restricted nature of the band's touring experience, had slot machines installed in their suite, so that was nice of them. Ivor Davis, observing the proceedings, came to realize that the mothers of Beatle fans were just as determined, if not more so, than their daughters in their quest to meet them. Sexual activity was rarely, if ever, performed by the girls, he recalled, but it was being performed by mothers as a passport for their daughters. Before the first show that day, Kane interviewed Paul about American racial segregation practices, noting that the band would be playing in Florida during the tour's final stretch. Paul was firm about the Beatles' belief that you can't treat other human beings like animals, adding that I wouldn't mind them sitting next to me. It's the way we all feel. The matinee passed without incident. The problems began with the Beatles' second Vegas show, which was briefly delayed by a bomb threat, almost like the American equivalent of the anti-trash society that was in Australia. Mal was impressed by the Las Vegas police. They had formed themselves into a human blockade in front of the stage. The real action happened that night at the Sahara, after the band returned to the hotel inside the safety of a Brinks armored truck. As Mal and Neil took up their usual post, patrolling the hallways and acting as traffic wardens for the bandmates' guests, 15-year-old Georgiana Steele and her friend Arlene joined in the post-show party. Georgiana's mother was at the Sahara to play the role of chaperone, checking that the girls' purity was still intact. And it was, for the most part, aside from Georgiana's. She made out with George and was chased around the suite by John, who was dressed in only a pair of red and white polka dot boxer shorts. Eventually, Georgiana fell asleep after drinking some alcohol, which had been flowing liberally through the night. And the real trouble still lay ahead. At 5 a.m., Mal rapped on Larry Kane's door, ordering the reporter to get dressed and put on a jacket and tie. Kane asked, "Why him?" And Mal said, "Larry, you're a reporter. You look more trustworthy." Kane joined Mal, where they encountered an angry mother, whose twin 14-year-old daughters had also joined the party that night. The girl's mother may have also had a bit to drink because she had been gambling in the casino downstairs. She demanded access to the Beatles' suite. She had already telephoned the Clark County Sheriff's Office, reporting that her daughters were being held captive. 2 detectives arrived on the scene, which now included Neil and Derek, and then began taking statements from John and Brian. Derek tried to run interference, explaining that the girl's mother had given permission for her daughters to attend the party. Kane glanced at Mal and Neil, looking for signs of sincerity, for affirmation that indeed nothing untoward had occurred. "Where are the girls?" Kane asked. In response, Malcolm grinned while Neil said nothing. And that's when the elevator door opened and the woman's twin daughters, accompanied by a police officer, casually strolled into the corridor, smiling and no worse for wear. They said they had been in the Beatles suite with John, who had been a perfect gentleman all night. The detectives left after they felt that no laws had been broken. Brian gave the woman a fistful of her cash for her trouble. John shrugged off the whole thing. He was blind to the fact that they had narrowly avoided a full-blown scandal and possibly even statutory, the word, I can't say it on YouTube, charges, courtesy of the Vegas police. Dawn was bringing in a new day, and Mal woke up the party, such as it was. With some luck, maybe Mal could grab a few winks before breaking camp at the Sahara. They had to be on a plane to Seattle in only a few short hours. When the tour got to Los Angeles on August 23rd, Mal was exhausted. The evening before, he was forced to get a physical after the band's show at Vancouver's Empire Stadium. Kane remembered Mal had shielded John Lennon from onrushing fans, and at one point stiff-arming a boy who had tried to get to the Beatles' car. Later, when they got on the plane, Kane complimented Mal on his prowess. He replied, "Just wait for me next act." For the rest of their visit to Los Angeles, where the Beatles played at the Hollywood Bowl, the band and their entourage stayed at the rented Bel Air home of British actor Reginald Owen. To Mal's glee, Colonel Tom Parker visited them several times, bringing greetings and gifts from the king of rock and roll, who had already left the city to go back to his Graceland home. Mal was hurt, though, when Neil and the boys received albums and a Pioneer-covered wagon table lamp, and he didn't get anything, so he felt left out. And one of the boys quietly mentioned it to Colonel Tom, and he made a special return trip with a whole collection of albums, and he got a very special Wells Fargo stagecoach lamp from the Colonel and Elvis. Later, Lily was fond of saying that if there was a fire at home, Mal would save the stagecoach and Elvis records and come back for me. Several days later, Mal got the thrill of his life, at first vicariously, when Chris Hutchins, editor of NME, arranged for Paul to speak on the phone with Elvis. Mal later wrote that, "To my delight, after speaking to Elvis for about 10 minutes, Paul said, 'Elvis, I'd like you to say hello to one of your biggest fans. He works for us. He's our road manager, Malcolm Evans.'" Mal was tongue-tied. The first words Elvis said to me were, "It's a pleasure to talk to you, sir." After that, I went blank as I rubbled thank yous to him and telling him what a pleasure he had given me over the years. I was so knocked out that he would take the time to talk, and amazed how polite he was to me, a mere fan. And during their stay in Los Angeles, Mal enjoyed plenty of opportunities to mingle with the stars of the day. At a garden party for the Hemophilia Society, he met stars like Frank Sinatra, Jane Fonda, Kirk Douglas, and Dean Martin, along with other stars. The Beatles' headline there was the courtesy to Capitol Records president Alan Livingston, and Mal put on one of his tailored suits. Model Peggy Lipton crashed the event hoping to meet the Beatles. At 17, the future star of TV's Mod Squad joined the entourage back in Bel Air. By this time, the rented place had become a focal point for the rich and famous, and that week Mal wrote a long overdue letter to Lil and told her about his stargazing experiences. One night, the band and their entourage had joined Burt Lancaster at his home, where the actor screened A Shot in the Dark, the new Peter Sellers film. Mal was awed by Lancaster's luxurious digs. He wrote to Lily, "He has a wide screen fitted in his living room, a truly fabulous home which cost about $1 million. He has a gymnasium fitted in, sunken bath, and a gorgeous swimming pool that is warm and even steaming. George, Ringo, and myself went in for a swim, and Bert lent me his own personal swimming trunks. You can imagine how thrilled I feel about it all." On August 28th, the boys and their entourage rolled into New York City for a pair of concerts at the Forest Hills Stadium in Queens, and they checked into the Delmonico Hotel. The first show was difficult for the Righteous Brothers. Things came to a head in the middle of their act because the Beatles dropped behind the stage onto the tennis courts at Forest Hills by helicopter, Mal remembered. The Righteous Brothers just couldn't be heard above the roaring crowd chanting Beatles. Everyone stood up, pointing to the helicopter, and completely ignoring the wonderful artist on stage. Preceding the Beatles must surely be the hardest gig in the world. About an hour after the concert, as Mal and the Beatles settled into their suite at the Delmonico, folk musician Bob Dylan dropped by the hotel as they were sitting down for a late-night meal with Brian and Neil. New York columnist Al Ornowitz was there too. He was the one who set up the meeting. Not long after Dylan got there, the Beatles offered him a sample from their motley collection of pills, Drinamils and Prelude in both uppers mostly, but Dylan declined. He suggested something more organic. At first, Brian demurred, sensing the Beatles' apprehension. That is when Dylan said, "What about that, your song, the one about getting high?" At that, he started to sing the middle eight from I Want to Hold Your Hand. And when I touch you, I get high, I get high. John quickly said, "Those aren't the words. It's I can't hide, I can't hide." So Ringo tried the marijuana first. A few puffs from Dylan's joint left him smiling and suddenly marveling about the way the ceiling seemed to float down onto him. Soon they were all stoned. George recalled that we were just legless, aching from laughter, and for Paul especially, the Beatles' first brush with the devil weed seemed not only mind-blowing, but a moment of great import. To him it felt exactly like the kind of experience that should be captured for prosperity. He gave Mal a pencil and paper and ordered him to write down what was being said. Despite being high in his own right, Mal managed to record the Beatles' most insightful thoughts. The next morning, Mal retrieved the musings, which boiled down to a single sentence. "There are 7 levels," his notes read. Roadie, ? Bodyguard, fixer. Now Mal could add transcriber to his portfolio. The Beatles then had a much-needed rest in Atlantic City after performing there on August 30th. They had 16 cities in front of them. The North American tour hadn't even reached the halfway point, and the band and the entourage were fatigued. Tempers were running high, and when things got heated, Mal and Neil got the brunt of things. Mal later recalled that my ideas about the fellows soon changed. Up to then, they had been 4 beautiful people. I looked upon them as gods. I soon found out that they were just ordinary blows, not made of platinum. I got some belly aching and I couldn't answer back. I just had to put up with it. So the next part I'm going to read is what John said, so I can't say the words he said, so I'll just give you part of the word and you'll know what I mean. So John held no illusions about the Beatles' behavior. He later said, "We were bass. You can't be anything else in such a pressurized situation," and we took it out on Neil, Derek, and Mal. They took a lot of, stuff from us because we were in such a SH position. It was hard work, and somebody had to take it. Those things are left out about what BAS we were. Effing BAS, that's what the Beatles were. You have to be a BAS to make it, and that's a fact. And the Beatles were the biggest BASs on earth. We were the Caesars. Who's going to knock us when there's £1 million to be made? All the handouts, the bribery, the police, and the hype. And the Caesars were demanding overlords indeed. As the Beatles' entourage moved into the final 3 weeks of the tour, they had become cannier in ways to conduct the boys' post-show activities. There was a reckless element to their thinking, to be sure. This was the United States in 1964, where a conservative morality still reigned. At this point, Kane observed, the few teenagers who showed up late at night were fan club leaders delivering gifts and mail, and they were given soda and a chance to take pictures with the band, nothing more. But then there was the issue of the Beatles' other late-night female guest, which was no small matter, and which they had no interest in foregoing, in spite of the risk. The system was simple, Kane said. Getting women into hotels required somebody with the power to do so. The Beatles couldn't just wait in the lobby for someone to show up. So Mal Evans and Neil Aspinall would arrange for access and transit. For the most part, Neil or Mal would select the women who would have access to the band with some obvious benefits attached. When it came to picking out females for the Beatles, Mal had become a suave and smooth procurer, according to Kane. He was able to spot a target with incredible intuition. It was as though he could pick up the scent of the women who were willing. Only rarely did I see him alone in a hotel corridor. At least his flair for recruiting included an understanding of the difficulties the Beatles could face if any female companion was underage or wronged in any way. If one could get an Oscar for safely procuring women, Mal Evans would have received the Lifetime Achievement Award. Before a Chicago gig on September the 5th, Mal was called upon to reprise his bodyguard role. As the boys in the entourage exited the Sahara Hotel, he spotted a woman in the crowd making a beeline for Paul with a pair of handcuffs. She had attached one end of the handcuff onto her wrist, and she was going to attach the other end onto Paul's wrist. It was a great idea, but she didn't make it. So I'm going to end the video here. In this episode, Mal got to meet plenty of stars in Los Angeles and marveled at Burt Lancaster's home. He also had a chance, thanks to Paul, to speak to Elvis, and Mal was always his #1 fan. He also had to deal with the fans and their mothers, and no wonder he was often exhausted. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't subscribed, if you could do so, it would help the channel to grow, as well as giving it a thumbs up. It's all a great help. And if you haven't clicked on the notification bell, if you could do that, it lets you know when a video is posted. And I wish everyone a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of the Beatles Forever. Thank you. Bye.